So the 1994 Little Rascals adaptation is kind of weird. Like Trump makes this cameo and spits popcorn presumably onto someone's head. There's this Macaulay Culkin lookalike, and one of my biggest pet peeves in kids movies, a boy running around in his underwear and later naked. Like, I'm so sorry, kid. And there's a bunch of other gender war stuff and kids acting like adults is funny that we'll get into later. But there is one genuine moment that I really like, which is when Alfalfa and Spanky are bored waiting for Darla to get out of her dance recital, and Alfalfa goes, "I'm bored." And Spanky then proceeds to take out a frog and literally says, "Ta-da!"
I'm bored. Ta-da! Gee, thanks.
Like, that just got to me. It actually got to me so much, I even made a comic out of it for my diary. And of course, there's this subtle message of the Little Rascals that was there from its inception from the 1920s, like 100 years ago, which is that kids are people too.
You're not people. You're kids.
There's this theme that kids should have a voice and be respected that I think should be pushed more in the media we consume and behind the scenes. And this being a 90s movie, there's cameos from the Olsen twins and Raven-Symoné, and even Mel Brooks of all people. And though the intention behind The Little Rascals from its beginnings to the 1994 adaptation has been about lifting kids up, the child actors on set in the bloopers during the end credits seem obviously fed up at times with the production. And even the adults behind the camera sound annoyed. Like when the actress who plays Darla, Brittany Holmes, can't stop looking at the camera.
Stop looking at the camera, please.
Been a beautiful child.
Brittany! Over again.
I don't want
Okay?
I don't want to.
Okay. You don't want to?
No.
You have the hiccups?
Some seem genuinely bored and tired, and it's not surprising that so many child actors from that era, the era of 90s child stars and entertainers who were in movie and TV productions for child audiences, decided to then take a step back as adults or even wanted to continue with acting but couldn't find work or make that transition to adult roles. It makes me sad to think that the kids during filming were so tired and probably weren't having that much fun. And today with AI, there's even discussions of replacing child actors with AI. But I also don't think that's the solution either. Not only because I don't think we should keep building data centers and destroying the earth to cater to AI, but also because kids deserve to see other kids, like real kids, on screen, and we can better respect child labor laws and create new laws to protect children. Children shouldn't be replaced by technology. They're part of our society and the human experience, and child audiences should be able to see themselves and find children to relate to. The problem, of course, then comes to consent, and can child actors even consent to having jobs or paying their parents' bills? I really don't have an answer for that, but I think at the very least AI isn't the answer, but let me know what you think down below. So in the rest of this video, I just want to delve into a little bit of the history of the Little Rascals and how a lot of children's entertainment both has and hasn't changed much in the past 100 years, and I'll also talk about the 1994 adaptation and its themes. So without further ado, let's go. When Our Gang was introduced during the silent short era in 1922 by creator Hal Roach, it sort of broke boundaries at the time of its release. Not only were the kids portrayed as naturally as possible, oftentimes improvising as Roach downplayed the set equipment and let them go off script, but also for showing black and white kids playing together, though not necessarily portraying them as equals. The black children were written as racial stereotypes and at times subservient to the white cast, but simply having them go to school together challenged norms at the time in the US where segregation was the law of the land. Some audiences even complained that the black children got too much screen time. The Our Gang shorts also showed poor, conventionally unattractive children as the heroes, or at least as the main characters, and at odds with rich characters, for example, which the 1994 movie took note of. So for something that came out in 1922, it was fairly progressive despite how it reinforced stereotypes of not only black children but of fat and visibly different children. Though sometimes I wonder cynically that casting a diverse array of characters at a time when that wasn't the norm was just to make headlines, like just for shock value and to get butts in seats. And as we know, change doesn't simply come about because of a diversity campaign. Just having black children in The Little Rascals didn't convince legislators to end segregation, and I'm not sure it was even a start, as again, the black characters were shown as the butts of jokes and even portrayed as enslaved children. The most famous black actors of the group, Sunshine Sammy or Ernest Morrison, Alan Hoskins, Eugene Jackson, and William Thomas Jr. didn't reach any heights of fame. In fact, Sunshine Sammy was hired as a baby because he was so quiet on set and didn't cry. He was originally brought in to replace a baby that was constantly crying. So much for praising kids being kids. Alan Hoskins started working as a 1-year-old on Our Gang and hated that people thought that his role as Farina meant that he was swimming in dough and residual checks. According to a 1979 article from the Indiana Gazette, Alan Hoskins says he has fond memories of playing Farina in Our Gang about 50 years ago, but he hasn't had any residuals. I'm sick and tired of people thinking I get residuals or payment for replays of the still popular series. Hoskins said in a 1979 interview, I haven't got no pot of money. I have never tried to trade off the name Farina. I haven't done that. I don't do that. Instead, the 58-year-old Hoskins said he struggled through years of house painting and dishwashing before landing his present job as a public information officer for the Alameda County chapter of the Association for Mentally Disabled Children. William Thomas Jr., who portrayed Buckwheat as a toddler and young child, was originally put in girls' costuming until the 1936 short General Spanky, when Thomas, who was then only 4, portrayed an enslaved African boy asking Spanky, "You be my master." Interestingly enough, Hoskins as Farina would also be dressed as a girl. They did hire the black actor's baby sisters to play female parts and also male parts. The actor who played Stymie, Matthew Beard Jr.'s sister, Betty Jane, played Hector for a while on Our Gang. I'm not sure if the white actors were also gender bent in this way. So far, I haven't found evidence of it. If you know more, please leave a comment. William Thomas Jr. would later join the war effort, as many of his counterparts born in the late 20s and 30s did. And once he returned to civilian life, he continued to work behind the scenes, cutting films and editing until his passing at the young age of 49. He had a son who shared his namesake and continued his story, but he passed away at 62 in 2012. His son also had to deal with someone in 1990 pretending to be his father, and the ABC News magazine 2020 entertaining this idea and even doing an interview with the impersonator when his actual father passed away a decade earlier. Buckwheat has become synonymous with the pickaninny stereotype and even used as a slur as recently as 2023 by Del Kennedy to refer to former White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. So, though you could make the argument that Our Gang / The Little Rascals was a step in the right direction by at least not segregating kids on screen, I really don't think it did that much in the way of challenging racial bias or institutional racism. And I know I'll get comments saying, well, that's not their job to do that, but at the same time, why even have these characters in there if they're just going to be stereotypes anyway, just as the butts of jokes? And then you have some fans saying that The Little Rascals was progressive. It just doesn't really make sense. And I feel the need to highlight that the child actors don't need to justify their work in these pictures as adults. They were kids. They shouldn't be ashamed or embarrassed of their roles. Rather, the shame should fall on Roach and the directors and adults on the production team who put these kids into these situations, especially not giving them any residuals or recourse after they aged out and could no longer be exploited because they weren't cute anymore. I feel like a lot of the time we expect black actors to repent for roles that perpetuated stereotypes. And I think maybe in modern times that's more understandable. It's a case-by-case thing, but when it comes to Our Gang, the actors don't need to justify themselves or repent. They were children. Both Morrison, Beard, and Thomas, 3 of the black actors from Our Gang, in the 70s went on to defend their work in Our Gang, and even came out to say that Hal Roach, the creator behind the series, was colorblind. I just find it interesting how mainstream media frames the fault of stereotypes in media as being the fault of the actors. I also feel really bad for the kids who had nowhere to go after they aged out of the production. That must have been a form of psychological torture, knowing that just because you grow up, you'll be out of a job, especially during the 30s, during the Great Depression. Not to mention, if you're helping to support your family as a child, that's not right. But that was the norm in the 20s and 30s, and even until recently for kids in the entertainment industry to be paying their parents' bills. I'd argue if the Little Rascals or the kids of Our Gang were alive today, they'd be kidfluencers, exploited by their own parents, at home, on a family channel somewhere, or even living at a child version of a hype house. Exploiting children for entertainment is sadly as old as film itself, and the 1990s were no exception. So now knowing about this sordid history of the Little Rascals, they obviously had to update it for modern audiences, where at least most of us don't tolerate racist stereotypes or jokes about slavery. The newer movie focuses on Alfalfa and Spanky's relationship and how Alfalfa doesn't hate girls actually and isn't a misogynist or a he-man woman hater. Spanky and the gang tried to break Alfalfa and Darla up, and they succeed. But Spanky realizes that just because his friend has a crush doesn't mean that he'll lose his best friend. We also learn that girls can do whatever boys can do, like drive race cars. And overall, that's all well and good. There's even a message about class solidarity, as we're rooting for the Rascals and not the Richie Rich type character whose dad is Donald Trump, by the way. And when it comes to race, there's really not a focus on that. Buckwheat is there, and he's portrayed by Ross Bagley, who would later be on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and he plays Whoopi Goldberg's son. They don't really try to correct anything as much as make sure there is some diversity in there, and there's even an Asian kid in the background. Progress. There's a bigger focus instead on gender in the 1994 movie, where it's the whole men are from Mars and women are from Venus thing. Boys suck and girls stink. And it's a type of humor that comes from kids acting like adults, which is a prominent aspect of child acting from the 20s and 30s, but I just don't find it funny. Why are the boys annoyed at girls? They don't have woman problems. They're not married. They're not in relationships. It just doesn't make any sense. These kids range from ages 4 to 9 years old, and they're complaining about each other like old married couples. Like, I don't get it. I think that's why the I'm bored frog moment made me laugh so much, because that's just kids being kids and not scripted into talking as if they have adult problems. And though there is progressive messaging about girls being able to do boy stuff and being just as competent as boys, when it comes to the boys doing ballet, for example, or even dressing in drag, like Darla does later, she pretends or is disguised as a man. When the boys do it and they dress up as girls, it's done for a laugh, as a gag. Isn't it funny? Boys can't do ballet. Oh, look at these two boys. They think Spanky is a girl. Oh, but he's actually a boy. That's the joke. And I just don't like how we can have this progressive messaging about girls doing boy stuff, but not the other way around. Boys can do ballet. They can wear skirts and experiment with their clothing and their interests. If anything, I think there's something to be said about how kids who are in elementary school and haven't entered puberty can experiment with gender and the fluidity of gender, and how it's not cut and dry, and how clothes are just clothes, and ballet is just ballet, and racing cars is just racing cars. They're not gendered. Childhood is a time to explore that kind of stuff and figure out who you are, and I think in a potential Little Rascals remake, or even just a show aimed at kids, that could be talked about more. Seeing how reboots are big now, and that it's been 100 years since the Little Rascals even debuted, I think it would be an interesting reimagining. But anyway, long story short, you don't need to be defined by your gender or be put into a gender box so early in your life, but it's all over this movie that boys are boys and girls are girls, and never the two shall meet, unless it's under the guise of romance, even though you're like 6, Darla's 6, and Alfalfa's 9. I don't know, it just feels wrong to me to just totally laugh and mock this idea that some boys can be feminine, and also to have like these kids kiss. Though I will say Alfalfa has his feminine side accepted by the boys in the end, and all the boys go on to accept girls in their club and as a part of life. And in 2026, sadly, boys simping for girls is like a taboo for men now, so I guess the 94 remake is progressive in that sense. But just like the original Little Rascals, I feel bad for the child actors, some of whom again look bored and tired in the outtakes, and complain about doing them. Child actors are a form of child labor, and I don't know how to feel about that. But I also don't want to replace children with AI replicas of children. How will that change the way children view themselves? How will that change children's ideas about acting and art and what they can do and their own abilities as humans? I know I'm looking really deep into this movie that was made for grandparents who were like 70 at the time and born between 1924 and 1930, who remember watching Our Gang in theaters. But I do think these questions are worth asking, because media for children starring children feels lacking to me right now, at least as a parent. In 2025, we only had a handful of child-centric films. Gabby's Dollhouse and Lilo and Stitch come to mind. There's also Percy Jackson and How to Train Your Dragon for tweens. And maybe that's a good thing, because again, child actors are doing jobs they shouldn't have necessarily and they can't really consent to. At the same time, I do feel like it's perhaps a disservice to children to not have media specifically for them starring kids like them. Maybe we were just spoiled in the 90s with child actors being everywhere, like the Olsen twins and Lizzie McGuire, and even like Barney, Dennis the Menace, Home Alone, etc. But I just think it's important for kids to see other kids to relate to in media specifically made for them. That isn't just kidfluencers trying to sell them stuff and unboxing crap in 30-second videos. At the same time, those kids also need to be protected and supported, and maybe that just can't happen on a film set, but that also can't really happen in your home where your mom or dad turns into your director and boss violence. Maybe kids would be more protected in a regulated area like a studio, but maybe not. There needs to be checks and balances and ways adults can be held accountable for the well-being of children in their care and also as employees, believe it or not, if that should even be a thing to begin with. Will that ever be achieved? I don't know, but I hope one day it could perhaps be a reality. But for now, maybe it's better that just no one under 18 becomes famous. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching and taking this stroll down memory lane for me. Please subscribe if you liked it, give this video a like, leave a comment, share it with someone. Thank you to my patrons. Without them, this video wouldn't be possible. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.